Hey everyone. So I am Kari the Mortician battling technology yet again. I don't know why I've closed all my browsers, but still for some reason things don't work. Oh, and you guys hear me say that too often, but I just don't know. I need a tech person on standby at all times. So welcome. Good to see everybody. Hey, Mary and Nicole and Lisa. Finally, I can see you guys chatting. Welcome. Yeah, I don't know what the heck, why that live chat just is gone sometimes. Hey, Lauren. Hey, Robert. Hey, everybody. So that first main question, I'm going to repeat it all over. What happens to the artificial joints when someone is cremated? So let's say grandma's cremated. She has an artificial hip. What happens to it? After the cremation process, that large chunk is removed and it can be recycled, or sometimes families want them back, and that's okay. They can have them back if they want them back in whole. So they're typically recycled, or sometimes people do want them back for whatever reason. Trevor, what? How many days have you been in there? Hey, Heather, welcome. And Jimmy, I love when you guys are so excited to catch me live. It's so fun. So I'm diving into questions because we're going to see how many we can hammer out in a short time. If there is no next of kin or will, what happens to the body of the deceased? I am the last of the family and don't see myself having a significant other or kids. What will happen to me? So you can have a guardian through the state. You can also appoint somebody in some states to be your representative. You can leave somebody as the executor of your estate. It doesn't have to be your blood relative. Somebody else can be in charge of things, especially if you don't have family. You know, people say you don't have family, but everybody has family. You're connected to somebody in some way. So even if it's a second cousin twice removed or whatever it is, you're still connected to somebody. So that person technically is legally bound to give authorization. They're not bound to pay for anything for you, but they are kind of by blood need to give consent sometimes. Thank you, Bob. Yeah, hit that like button. Lynn, welcome to the live. Is there any time that a body cannot be cremated? So this is fascinating. I did a tour of a crematory last week, and we actually discussed this. When certain radioactive things are used in radiation treatment, they may implant under the tissue little beads that are radioactive, and you just have to wait out their half-life before you can cremate the person. So it may be like 30 days or whatever that you may have to wait for that person to be able to be cremated. Otherwise, you're releasing that radioactive substance into the atmosphere, which is not good. So that's one of the few times that you really can't cremate. Hey, Lee, thank you so much. Pouty, oh, you're in hospice and want to donate your remains. You'll want to find somewhere that will accept your body as is, because everyone does not accept you just because you're a body. You may not meet their requirements. If you're too thin, if you're too heavy, if you have certain illnesses, you may be rejected. So you're going to want to find somewhere and get pre-authorization. What happens to all the moisture of the dead in like 10 to 20 years? Like when they open a casket and once the air comes in, the body just collapses. It's some of those questions are too many variables. What's the water table? What state are you in? Are you up north? Are you down south? That means it's going to be hot or it's going to be cold parts of the year. Is it the body mummified? Is it liquefied? There's too many variables in all of that. This past Saturday, I went to my friend's mother's visitation. Is there a reason why she didn't look dead at all? Like literally looked like she could hop in a casket and lay down. Because the embalmer did an awesome job. It's that simple that you hear a lot of bad stories of bad presentations, but there's a lot of really good stories of people looking just really good and natural and not all made up, not swollen, not disfigured. They just look really good. So it's nice to hear that. Is there a marker in the cremated remains to identify whose ashes are in the box? I heard there's a metal tab. Yes, there is a little metal disc, and that's often stainless steel, and that's with the person throughout the process, whether it's hanging on the outside of the machine or whether it's in with the cremated remains. But it stays with them, and that's their ID number that they're given when they enter into the facility. Hey, Amanda, welcome. Yay, I love that you guys join live sessions. Mummified, where rather than the body kind of liquefying down, they just dry right up. And there's just different variables and different reasons. How or who do you talk to have your body donated to a cadaver study? You need to call the medical schools. That's who you need to talk to, because that's who receives the bodies for donations to medical schools. All these third-party companies, you don't know where your body parts are going. Honestly, like I don't trust them, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't. Just read your contracts. Read your contracts, because that's going to tell you what they may do with your body. You may be pieced up and sent all across the country in different directions. There's all sorts of things that can happen. That can happen at medical schools too. So you need to read your contract. Hey, in Grand Rapids, I just love that when people are like 20 minutes down the road. Marianne, you're like 20 minutes from me. Like, that's crazy. You can't donate your pacemaker right to the hospital to be used again. You can return it to like a pacemaker company, and they can, sometimes they do studies where they track different things in them and stuff, but are your remains mixed with others, or is the crematorium cleaned in between? Okay, so the floor of the retort is porous. So you are never, ever, ever, ever going to get 100% of the person out of it. And so you're going to maybe have a small bit of commingle. It's only because it's not a smooth swipe-free surface. It's not like tile where you can swipe the whole of the person out. There's going to be residue along the way that's going to be with others, but it's not like a cup of somebody else is in with your loved one. It's minute little pieces, but it can definitely, it does happen. There's no can. There's cross-contamination always. There's no way to make it 100% your only individual. Trevor, when I helped embalm my mother-in-law and casket her, I had to sign tons of paperwork. Can you explain the paperwork I signed? I don't know what for sure you signed. I would guess it would be, a releasing liability of the funeral home, that you can't go back and sue them for mental anguish or, for seeing what you saw. And it also probably states that you understand you're not licensed, but you want to be touching a deceased and being in the room, even though you need to be licensed and stuff to be in there. So I would imagine it's some of that kind of paperwork. Dream, how do I get to shadow a funeral home? No one wants to take me in. It's something where you may have to drive 2-3 hours to go get a shadow opportunity if you want to really see what's going on. Especially places are busy. Their priority is not you. And I know that seems harsh to say, but it's not. Like, you send people that send in resumes that there's not a job opening posted. It's going to get stuck in the bottom of a pile of all the other stuff they're trying to get accomplished for serving families. If you just stop in, you could be like the 20th person that stops in that week between salespeople and random families and all sorts of stuff. So it's important to you, but you may not be important to them. And I know that sounds terrible, but it's the truth because of the nature of the business and how urgent it is serving families when we're working in a 2 to 3 day time frame sometimes. So keep approaching. Call a funeral director. Don't start with asking them if you can shadow for a day. Just call and say, can I please take you for a cup of coffee and have an hour of your time to talk to you? I want to go into this business and I need to know more before I invest too much time. Ask to take them to coffee. Have a list of questions. Be prepared. Go in wanting to get out of that 1 hour as much as you can. Stop in with donuts one morning and just say, I wanted to stop in and introduce myself. I live around here. I'm interested in the business. I would like to come spend a few hours here one day. Let's talk about making that happen. So it's about the approach. It's about how you approach it. I don't know what you've done so far. I don't know how you're dressed, what you brought, if you had a resume. I don't know if you just sent an email, if you called. I don't know what you did yet, but it's all about the approach and it's all about how you kind of play that out. Do you have to be licensed to shadow? No, you don't. You might have to be licensed to watch an embalming, but to shadow a funeral director, which is a huge other chunk of what the business is, you don't have to be licensed. Dream, and I'm not being mean by saying that, but it's reality. And I think too many people say, well, no one gave me a chance. And I say, well, what did you do? And I've had people say, well, I sent an email to one place. That email got buried. If I like today alone, I probably fielded 70, I don't know, emails from people that I'm handling, services and are urgent, are things that I'm doing right now that I have to handle. So a request that's not of urgency is getting buried. And eventually when I have a slow spell, maybe in 3 weeks, I might get back to that email. So it just all depends on what you've done to approach. Feel free to email me directly and we can talk about, what you've done and I can try and give you a little more help on that. I'm always happy to help. Can you make a person look like they are smirking? The mouth can really be manipulated if needs to be. I mean, you can lift tissue, you can move things, you can hold it in place while you're fixating tissue. So there are things. You can put a smile. It doesn't always look natural though, because the rest of you's relaxed, but then you got this weird smile. So you can do like a sneer kind of thing. You can do all sorts of things. My father recently passed. Does it take a while to cremate, or is it just that they are busy right now? I'm just curious. Sharon, what part of the country are you in? Hey, Tiffany. Yeah, right now, everybody, I mean, you only cremate 3 in a day sometimes if it's a crematory, and they only have 1 retort. You might be able to cremate 4 possibly. They don't run 24/7. They don't have huge staffs that come in all sorts of shifts. So you can only cremate so many at a time, unfortunately. So sometimes it takes quite a while. Have you guys seen what's going on? Is it in India right now? Where bodies are literally just everywhere, laying all over the place, waiting to be cremated. It is insane. So if you haven't seen that, you need to Google and look all of that up. How do you handle families who won't honor a LGBTQ person request after death? Autistic. Are you meaning like somebody who dressed female but is by birth male and wants to be buried female, but they want to bury him male? Is that kind of what you're meaning by that? I've said I don't like putting live flowers in the casket because of the moisture. What if family gives you a live corsage? I do what the family wants. I'm not saying that when it comes to families. I'm saying like my own personal family and my own personal choices when I'm not just leading the funeral. How long does it take to cremate a body? About 2 to 3 hours. Hey, Bubba, Tommy. Okay, someone who is transgender or gay. So, just because they're gay doesn't change how you would bury them. So, what part of them being gay changes how you would bury them? If they dressed differently, or if they had a significant other, maybe that the family was trying to cut out of the process. I mean, back in the day before same-sex marriage was legal and before things were more accepted like they are now, we would often see where, I mean, the significant other someone had had for 20 years and who was their partner was not the legal next of kin, and we couldn't listen to them. We had to listen to the parents or to the brothers and sisters. And sometimes that would get hard because we have to do what we legally have to do. And you see that there's somebody who's cut out who is obviously significant to the deceased. That is a hard position. But we can't go against the law. We have to follow what we have to do. Dressing like a drag queen. So if the deceased wanted to be buried like a drag queen, but the family wanted them to be buried in, I guess, everyday whatever clothing, we have to follow what the family is telling us to do. So if the person is in a state where they can appoint a disposition designee, like Michigan, I can appoint whoever to be in charge of my disposition. So if I don't believe that my family, my legal next of kin would follow what I wanted, I would appoint whoever to take care of that for me. Then the funeral director has to listen to that person. So when you're living, you have to think about these things because when you're dead, it's too late. It is too late for all of it. That's why you have to plan ahead. Nobody wants to talk about this stuff, but you need to, especially if you're in a position where you think your family is not going to do what you want. So you have to do all of that. Can I be cremated and an organ donor with a spinal cord stimulant? Yes, you can cremate. We would have to take it out if it has a battery, and you can donate organs if they're viable. Have I ever buried a minister, pastor in their robe? No. I had a friend who wanted to be dressed like a woman and they wouldn't do it. Yeah. If it's being done for a joke, then the funeral director definitely may not go along with it. They may not put a man in a bright pink casket because the family thinks it's hilarious. That may go against. We have to battle with a lot of ethical, moral. Do you bury grandma with her hand flipping the bird just because you think it's funny? Or do you make sure grandma is respected in her burial? It's really it's not a cut and dry sort of conversation, and it's very different between funeral directors, honestly. I think they mean misgendering someone in death, like a trans woman's family wanting their hair cut short and dressed in a suit because of a dress as the deceased would want. Yeah, so we have to do what they want. It's just the same with like on a death certificate. We can't put whatever gender we want on a death certificate. We legally still have to put what their birth gender is. We can't just choose a gender. So this has been a huge discussion, and I know it's a huge thing that a lot of people are fighting for because you can do it on a birth certificate and such, but on a death certificate, we don't get to choose. You don't just get to pick and just, put whatever they were legally as, we have to put on the death certificate. There's families who are happy about that. There's families who are upset about it. And what if you write what you want to happen to your body? Do you then listen to them or family? It depends on your state. In Michigan, you don't get a say. You have literally no say in what happens to your body after you die. None. Some states you do. Some states your family can come in and change your full prearrangement and do whatever they want. Some states they can't. So it depends on the state laws. Does it have to be formal? Sorry, Dream. I think the stream's going too fast. I'm like, yeah, you need to legally have your will in place and filed and everything if your state allows that. If you make pre-arrangements and pre-fund them, depending on the state, then they have to be followed through with. But in Michigan, they don't. Your family can come in and completely change whatever they want on it. Can you talk about corseting? Julia, what about corseting? I'm sorry that I don't know what corseting has to do with funeral directing. You mean like if somebody wants a corset on them when they're buried? My dad is not in the greatest health. My mom passed away last year. When the time comes, who has more say in arrangements, his kids or his sister? Kids. It goes spouse, children, grandchildren, only over 18. They have to be over 18. Then parents, then brothers and sisters. So siblings are way down that list. Way down the list. And it's majority. Hey, Ed in Florida. Yeah, guys, I'm going to be in Florida next week. I'm going to Fort Myers. I've only been to Florida one time in my life. And I was in Orlando at the convention center. And I pretty much didn't leave the convention center. So I don't consider that I've ever really been to Florida. So I'm going to Fort Myers and I'm really excited. I have no idea what to expect. I may just sit on my balcony for 2 days. I don't even know. So it should be interesting, but I'm going to Florida. I'm doing it. So in Michigan, you have Wayne State University over by Detroit, and that is the mortuary school in Michigan. My grandma has prearranged funeral, and the funeral changed casket companies from when she did her arrangements. What do you do when that happens? You can still get a casket from another company as long as the company exists, or they will sub in a casket from the company that they use now that is of like appearance and pricing. Often, if it's a really long time ago and the casket is absolutely not going to be found, I'll pull out a few that are, let's say it was a 20 gauge blue casket. And I know that much. I will pull out 1 or 2 or 3, depending how many there are in the price range of what it would be at today's value, and show it to the family and let them pick one. Tiffany, I don't even know where Regina's question is, honestly. The stream's going super fast that I don't see anything. No. Okay, hold on. Hi, how do you tell a 13-year-old about what happens when they bury their grandpa, as my daughter is scared at what she thinks she might see in her grandpa's coffin today? So, like when they bury him, like what happens at the cemetery, or which part? There's a lot of different parts for me to touch on there. So it's what she's going to see or what happens when they bury him. If my dad does a pre-funded super whiz bang and my older sister wants a direct cremation, will she get the money back he already paid? So James, you and her, if it's just you two, have the same equal rights to saying what happens to your dad. So she doesn't have any more right than you do to say what happens. It depends on your state. I don't know what state. I don't know the rules in your state on that. I'll have to find out, but it depends on what your state laws are on changing someone's prearrangement and if it's irrevocable or not irrevocable, which means whether the money can come back at all. So she could change it to a direct cremation, but you can't have the money back if it's irrevocable. So it does no good to change it just for the sake of money. Sad fire. I live in Fort Myers if you need to show you around safely. Oh, great. Crazy, rude, and fast. Oh my gosh. If there's 4 siblings and a decision on funeral arrangements are split 2-2, how is the tie-breaking decision made? The person has to be buried then. Burial is reversible. You can always dig someone up and cremate them. You cannot reverse cremation. So burial is the first method of disposition you would have to go with unless you get a majority ruling the other way. Do I have a favorite casket company? I don't think I have a favorite. I have specific caskets I really like, but there are so many casket companies. There's so many small ones. You go all over the country and you'll find small little casket companies all over the place. So I've not seen every casket there could ever be to be seen. So it's hard to really even, give an impression there. Oh, Fort Myers, can we meet? I thought about doing a meet and greet, but it's so hard for me coming to an area. I have no idea what's there and for me to try and organize something. So if you guys want to try and organize like something like a lunch or something, I'm game. So shoot me some emails. What artery do I use for embalming? My main is going to be the carotid, which is in your neck here. And that's going to be my main. I'm going to try every time, but you may have to raise ones in your leg, your wrists, your bicep area. So all different places. James, I'll have to find out what's in Illinois because I'm not for sure. Both mainly what she's going to see being buried. She's going to see her grandpa, who is still and laying there, and he's not going to have all of the joy and the laughter and everything that made him who her grandpa was to her. His body was tired, and he is not in his body. His body is dead. Do not say he's sleeping. He is not sleeping. And you're going to just lay to rest that shell that got tired. And he can't feel pain, but you can touch him. He's going to be room temperature, which is going to feel cold to her if she wants to touch him. He's not cold, but he's room temperature, which is 20 degrees colder than our bodies are. So it's going to he'll feel cold. So he can't smile. He doesn't have joy. And, he can't respond to how he would feel when he would usually see her. And she can respond however she wants. She can be sad. She can just walk away. She doesn't have to go up to the casket. And she can ask questions along the way. Don't overtalk the situation. When it comes to kids, we are so uncomfortable as adults. We overtalk and we keep talking because we get uncomfortable, and that's what we do. And when we're uncomfortable is we overtalk a situation. Let her ask the questions. Be brief, be basic, be blunt. You don't have to try to fix the situation. That's not fixable. He is dead. And you can't change that for her. All you can do is be there. You feel what you're feeling and let her feel her thing. If she doesn't respond, that's okay. If she's hysterical, that's okay. If she laughs, that's okay. You cannot judge how somebody else is going to respond to something, especially if it's one of her first times and seeing somebody and going to a funeral. But he's not a horror movie. He's still the shell, and the warm hand she would hold and the person she loved to hug, that's still the same shell. Just the personality that lived within him and all the emotions that lived within him are gone. Don't say things to imprint on her by telling her how she should feel or how you feel and that this is what she should feel. Just let her kind of ride her own wave out about it and let her make up her own decisions on it. Thank you. Do you ever go to funeral conventions and get helpful ideas? Yes. I'm looking forward this fall. We have the Nfda again in person. Last year's was canceled in New Orleans. So this year we're going to Nashville. So there's going to be a vast number of crazy, wild, drunk funeral directors taking over Nashville in October. We learn during the day, and many go out and have a really great time at night. So it gets interesting because every which way you turn, you're going to run into a funeral director. Ty is asking a really good question. If a couple passes at the same time, do you get charged for 2 funerals and plots? So if a couple dies at the same time, husband and wife, wife and wife, husband and husband, whatever the scenario, 2 people, same time, you're going to get charged double for the things that you have double. If you have 2 caskets, you have 2 visitations. If they're at the different times, if you have 2 funerals, different times, you're going to have 2 hearses. If it's a full body burial, you're going to have 2 plots. You're going to have 2 vaults. You're going to have 2 of a lot of things, but things you only have 1 of, 1 arrangement, 1 funeral if you have them together, 1, you're going to have some ones. So you're going to have some duplicates and you're going to have some that you get charged just one time for. So it's half and half-ish. Holly, that's the sweetest thing. It's awesome listening to you break down some tough questions with grace and kindness. Makes these kinds of conversations easier. Thank you. That's so sweet. Like you guys, when you get a body that has been autopsied, is the blood already drained out? It's not drained. Blood definitely has come out. You have the cavity is open. So where all the vessels have been cut in the cavity of the person are going to kind of run out, but parts of the body are lower. So the blood is pooled into them. You need to be above something. It's all tubing. Your circulatory system is tubing. So if the tubing is not above where it's going to be able to drain out, it's just going to settle. Does that make sense? So let's say your shoulder is here and your chest cavity comes down like this. This has to be able to be up like this to drain out into it. But if it's just level with it, it's not going to drain. It's just staying flat. Do you like my, I don't know if that makes sense. I'm trying. Can aspiring Nfda members go to the conference? No, you have to be licensed or a student to be able to go, or a spouse or significant other of a licensee to go. So you can't just show up and go. Jerry's asking something. Got a question about pre-planning. Go ahead and post it, Jerry. Do you remember the first person you embalmed? If so, what is the one thing you remember the most from that experience? Yeah, I remember the first time I was in the embalming room. Aspirating was a shock to me. I had no idea that happened. I had worked at the funeral home for years. I had no idea that they did that. Brand new information. So other than that, I kind of just took the whole thing in and just observed. It was all so very brand new. Even when you work in a funeral home, until you really see it, you don't know kind of all what's happening. How do I feel about death doulas? I think they can have a great place. I think it's just like hospice workers. Sometimes people overstep what they need to be doing. Like if you focus on what your position is, but people are helpful almost to the point that they're hindering sometimes. And so just like in all roles that the funeral director can even do the same, you try to help in an area that's not your area. So as long as everybody stays in their lanes, is that a good way to say it? I think all the positions can work really well together. But sometimes I think people go in thinking they need to protect the family because they were with them before you, but you need to kind of pass them off along the way as well. And you need to allow people to do what they do well. So the death doula can do their role, and then it comes in the funeral home, and the funeral home does their role, and the hospice, and everybody has their parts. And trusting that people are doing their parts and doing them well is what I think needs to happen. How do you work on Jewish deceased if they don't allow embalming? What do you do if it's required by state? We don't do anything. We may sanitize the deceased, dress them, and place them in their casket, and that's it. Hi, Kari. What is all is needed to own a crematorium? Like Kentwood, Michigan, Stephanie? Say yes. That's awesome because you're even closer to me than Grand Rapids. You just have to be licensed as a crematory operator and get all your EPAs and your certifications and everything, and you can be a crematory. It takes a lot of financial investment to get all the machines and all the operations and the cooler and everything. But just like anything, you just have to go through, and it's paperwork, licensing and stuff. Is there really such a thing as a professional mourners that are hired? Yes, not really here in America, but other countries do have professional mourners. The louder you are, the more people hoop and holler, the more you are awesome in life. How much is a traditional average funeral? What state? large funeral home, small funeral home. I mean, you can go 2 miles apart around here and it can be a $2,000 difference. So there's no average. Yes, Nicole, a family can help close the casket. I ask people all the time to help me tuck their loved one in. Thanks for your tender answers. Thank you. I watched a video the other day about how some people are being buried in these biodegradable caskets made out of mushrooms. Ever heard of it? Yes, I have. I don't know a ton about them. They're new and it's a newer product that's being released. It's more international right now. Sorry, guys, my leg's cramping up. It's being more produced internationally right now, but it is making news big time. I haven't seen research on it. I don't know that there's benefit to it, but it is a product that's being released. Why are there lights and such above the casket and around? It's called Cosmetic Lighting. It helps adjust the light of the individual. You don't want to walk up to somebody that's in darkness in a casket. You want them to be lit up and so everybody can see them. Cynthia, I have a funeral plan that I bought 15 years ago. When my time comes, will they have the same casket and vault I ordered and paid for on my plan? Typically, probably the vault casket, there might be different. It just depends on the company and if they change hands. Do families ever ask you, well, what would you choose? Merchandise. I don't know if I've ever had a family ask me that, honestly, yeah, I don't think they have in making funeral arrangements. I don't think I've ever had someone ask me. Stephanie, I hate paperwork. Guess I'll look into a different business. Every business is paperwork. Owning a business is paperwork. Is it hard to put hats on the dead? Not really. A fancy hat, like a woman's, like a church hat kind of thing, definitely you have to actually either cut the pillow specifically to put it in or cut off the back of the hat. Cowboy hat, same way. Either have to cut the back off or cut the pillow a certain way. Do you own a plot once you buy it? You own the rights to the lot. You don't actually own the land. Not in America. In America, you buy it. It's not leased like it is in some countries. Like in England, you lease the lot for like 25 years. But in America, you own the rights to that lot forever. Hey, Linda in Swartz Creek. Thank you so much. I've heard you say several times that a body will not just sit up, but I had a former coworker who used to work in a nursing home cleaning a body, and the body did sit up. Yeah, it doesn't, there's no part of the body that can make it happen. Everybody says they know somebody that this happened to, but no. I once heard that it doesn't matter the size of the person, they all produce the same amount of cremated remains. Is this true? No. It's based on your skeletal structure. I mean, you could have a 90-pound person and a 200-pound person, and they may produce the same amount of cremated remains. It depends on how the body is processed, the burn rate, the heat. I mean, you can go hotter and you can burn down more, or you can go less heat and you're going to have more cremated remains. So it just really depends on who's operating the machine and how it's running. I gotta sneeze. Sorry, guys. I think that's the first time I've sneezed on a video. Oh, have you ever seen a corpse with a horrified expression on its face or with a rictus smile? Not so much a horrified. Often the mouth is just open. I mean, that is a natural way that your body is. That's how you sleep. That's everything. Eyes kind of open and just hanging open. That's just how the person looks. So once you get the mouth closed, filled out a little, it's a totally different view of the person. No, I have not watched Buried with the Bernards. It doesn't interest me at all. This Hollywoodized version of them doing funerals, and it's what I do every day. So I don't really want to come home and watch a show about that. And I know you guys want to hear all about my take on it, but I would rather watch something that's completely different than what I do every day at work. So think about what your vocation is. And do you want to come home at night and watch a show all about it where the whole time you're going to go, that would never happen. That's not reality. That's not how working at a funeral home is. It's just not, it's not me winding down type things. Would they replace a casket and vault for something similar? Mine is pink and pink inside. Yes, you can get something similar to the one you want as long as what you wanted was written down specifically. My mom is the only one buried in our lot. I know it has room for 2 more. What would we be paying for when we need to bury another loved one? You're going to pay for opening and closing and possibly second right of interment. So it's essentially like buying a lot all over again for the most part. Sometimes they'll charge like half the price of the lot to use it again. So they're still going to make money off you, even though you have only one lot. Lisa, I need a moderator. Why do I need a moderator? I feel like a moderator is just to get rid of like people posting junk stuff in the thing. I'll have to find out, what does a moderator do for me? You'll have to email me. Email me, Lisa, and tell me what a moderator does. Can an autopsy tell you how long the person has been dead for? Because my mom passed in her sleep. Not specifically. I mean, they can narrow it, but you're not going to get an exact specific time that maybe they died. You can maybe get it within a couple hours. There's a show on Discovery Plus called Funeral Boss. Yes, there's an old show that used to be on. Oh, Family Plots. Yeah, that funeral home got sued and it closed. A lot of problems at that funeral home. Yeah, Tiffany, some cemeteries don't charge a second right of interment, but I'm finding that more are, because people are tripling or quadrupling up on cemetery spaces for cremated remains. Corporate especially is more often going to charge for them. I haven't seen any bad comments though today. My grandparents' stone is sank. Does the cemetery pay to fix it? No, not specifically. If there's no foundation under it because the family wouldn't pay for one or something, then no, they probably won't. So if there's no foundation, then you just pay to put a foundation under it, and that'll keep it up above the top. What happens when a cemetery fills up all the way? Who's financially responsible for it? There should be a trust or something in place that the money that goes in is there perpetually to care for the cemetery. How can a mortician know how someone died when the deceased didn't have an autopsy? The mortician told me how my friend died. We don't know how somebody died, and it's not up to us to determine. It's not that we don't care, but it's not for us to even figure. The doctor puts a cause of death. We don't have any part in determining a cause of death. However, after seeing enough strokes, heart attacks, certain kinds of cancers and things, you can see certain things on a deceased that you might be able to guess what the cause of death is, but not for certain. So like the other day, I was thinking about a scene from 6 Feet Under where the woman chokes to death. And I thought, I wonder how many people that are ruled heart attacks possibly choked on something, but nobody knows because there was no autopsy. So did they really have a heart attack or did they really choke on something? Because a lot of the visuals of that are the same for both. And I'm not going down in their throat to see what's going on down there. So how would you really know? Totally, like literally thought about this for 30 minutes the other day, debating over it. Kirk, I have literally no idea what you mean by how many boots do I have? And you ask me it all the time. No idea, literally no idea. So is it more for above ground plots outside, scared of ground burial in? Oh, mausoleum burial, yes, is often more expensive depending on the cemetery. There is no HIPAA when it comes to funeral homes. We do not have HIPAA. We have to have a patient in order for HIPAA to be in place, and we have no patient. There's no live person for us to have HIPAA, so we do not abide by anything with HIPAA. And we have authorization to medical. We are one of the like loopholes that funeral directors don't need to abide by. Like hospitals need to tell us information because of our position, but we don't abide by HIPAA. How do you get an autopsy report? When they told me I had my mom's boyfriend down as Teddy, his real name was Theodore, there's no Tay. How does this work? You just need to call the medical examiner's office to request it. And they may have a form that you fill out. Why do some cemeteries not allow the families to watch their loved one being lowered in the ground? I don't know any cemeteries that don't allow it unless it's a national cemetery that's federally run right now. They're not allowing it. Otherwise, I don't know. I've never been to a single cemetery that doesn't allow the family to witness. I'm going to do like one or two more, guys, and then I'm going to write this down. Why do some cemeteries... H. Landon. I don't even know what you're referring to, H. Landon. H. Landon, you've obviously never had a birth if you think funerals are more expensive than a birth. You've obviously never had a child, because that is absolutely the furthest from the truth. There's no anesthesiologist at a funeral home. There's no hospital gowns that you have to purchase and diapers and everything that you're charged for at a funeral home to have a baby. So yeah. Hi, Emily. Yeah, I'm just winding down too. I got your email. I'm going to need to respond to you still. I am a freelance mortician. I am a freelance funeral director and a trade embalmer. You can email me if you want to, Kari@KariNorthey.com, and I respond within a week. Sometimes I kind of glance over, and sometimes it takes me a few days. Sometimes I respond right away. So my next live will be next week sometime. I'll be in Florida for a few days, so I don't know when I'll go live next week. Yeah, Leo, I know I'm funny, and I sometimes. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you guys so much. And I will check you out on the next one. Boss Zay Williams, I see your thing. Why morticians are important. Okay. I gotcha. No worries. Thank you guys. I'll see you later. Bye.